This is Dwayne Moffatt with the Imperfect Parent podcast. And if you want to live up to your full potential as a parent, spouse, and leader, you should be listening to the Brotherhood of Fatherhood podcast with my friend, Scott Ramage.
Get ready to tune into stories of average men striving for greatness, to become the leaders that are needed in their homes, in their career, and their communities. This is the Brotherhood of Fatherhood podcast.
What's up, everybody? Before we get started, if you are a man who desires to live up to your full potential as a father, husband, and leader, you need a tribe that will challenge you and help you grow. If you have not joined the Brotherhood of Fatherhood Facebook group yet, be sure to hop on Facebook and search the Brotherhood of Fatherhood. Join, in my opinion, what is the most valuable group online for fathers, where you can get practical and tactical advice and support to be the father, husband, and leader you are destined to be. I also want to do a little added bonus today. I have another podcast called Stories That Sell. You're going to love it. Check it out. It's super easy to search for, and hope you give it a listen. So without further ado, a man who is probably going to disagree with I am the most valuable group online for fathers, but that's cool. Welcome, Dwayne. How are you today, my man?
Oh, man, Scott, it's been awesome to come here. You know, I've been looking forward to this all week. So, yeah, I'm excited about where this is going to go.
Yeah, it was really exciting to have you reach out to me, and then we connected, and it's obviously a great match. So you are the host of the Imperfect Parent podcast, and you're an electrician by trade. You're a business owner, and you're a girl dad times 3, which I'm a boy dad times 2. So I really enjoy talking to girl dads. So why did you start the Imperfect Parent podcast?
Well, you know, I launched it last November, kind of right in the midst of the pandemic, right?
Yep.
So that when the pandemic hit, life got crazy for a while. Me and the wife, you know, we went to our first round of therapy actually during that time. And I really started diving into myself. I'd been online a little bit, you know, learning the online world. And then wanted to find my place, wanted to find what kind of message I wanted to talk about. And, you know, one morning pouring a cup of coffee, I was like, the Imperfect Parent podcast. Yes, let's do a podcast. And so I dove right in and, you know, hired some podcast coaches and launched the podcast. And, you know, we're coming up on a year, episode 50 something, I think we're at. I launched it because I wanted more. Like you mentioned, I'm a business owner and tradesman. Well, you know, I've been that for 20 some years. I have 3 girls, which, you know, coming up to the pandemic, I was working on the road all the time. So I started to miss them, started to miss family life, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, the podcast came out of that. I wanted to find a way that I could maybe transition out of it. So yeah, it's a big story. I'm having a lot of fun, a lot of growth from the podcast, like personally, actually. And so, yeah, it's been quite the journey, man.
Yeah. I don't think people understand as a podcaster, you know, when I started the Brotherhood of Fatherhood podcast with my, the co-founder, Josh Price, the personal growth I went through for multiple reasons. And maybe you can speak to this too. Now you're in front of people. And so you want to be the best that you can be, and you want to relay a message that is leading people in the right way. That's how I feel, at least. 2, you're now an example. If people start to follow you, you really, really need to put these things into place. My wife and I do marriage classes. We actually work with couples. It's something that we're super passionate about. And last night I was telling them, I'm like, accountability is a huge deal. Cause they asked me, how do you make sure that you are intentional and do the right kind of dating with your wife? I said, quite honestly, I have 3,500 faces on me. I'm like, I put in place my own accountability group. And if I screw that up, I'm not leading the way I say I am. So for the podcasting has led this amazing opportunity to really make me lift my own, you know, my own boat has to rise.
Yeah.
The other thing is I get to meet incredible people. Like
Oh,
you're
man.
looking for people who have something to give, and people who are willing to give are people you learn from. And so like talking with guys like you and talking with all these men over the last year and a half, I think this is episode probably 100, or heck, you might even be 100. That might be kind of cool, but you're in the 90s
awesome.
at least. So, you know, that's a lot of people to talk to.
Oh man, it fills my cup. Like getting to reach out to, you know, men like you and other guests that have like, you know, stuff that can help us parents along our journey. It's the imperfect parent, you know, I wanted to create a community where there wasn't pressure to like nail parenthood on the first try. Like, you know, it's
Good luck with
messy.
that.
Yeah, like it's messy. And I wanted to create a safe space where, you know, people could come and just either, you know, gain some tools or just vent. Like I've had a few sessions with people that, you know, just let it out and we'll get back to that point and start again or whatever. It's incredible in this whole journey, the amount of people I've met that are curious and are looking for other things. So with my message going out, I just want to be a part of that. Like I would just want to be a part of the good message. Like so I haven't nailed it, but each day I show up and just keep trucking, man.
Yeah, like you'll never nail it, neither will I, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm getting a lot of people reaching out to me, and that's not to brag. It's just I get a lot of people that want to be on the podcast or want to talk about parenting or fatherhood or man stuff. And the name of your podcast hit me like a nail between the eyes. It's like, that is so perfect. It's so the imperfect is so perfect, because I think there's such this thing of being the perfect parent, and that is not obtainable. It's simply not obtainable. So how long and how did you come up with this name?
Well, you know, like if you're in the online space at all, like imperfect launch imperfectly, like that's kind of, you know, been a tagline. And yeah, it was just having coffee one morning. It just came to me and I looked it up. There was no podcast really called it. There's a little bit of content around that, like imperfect parenting kind of thing. But I thought I could do it a little bit better. So
yeah, that's great. Yeah. So you started up this podcast. You had coaches, which if anybody listens to me, they know I'm saying like, get a coach for everything you do. Find someone that's where you want to be and pay them to get you there. And I practice what I preach. I think like right now I have 3 coaches. So I'm a big fan. What was your whole, you've kind of mentioned it, but really what was your mission? It doesn't have to be a formal mission, but really what was the mission of starting this podcast?
Originally, I just wanted to talk with people and give my audience access to courses, programs, groups, support groups, like anything that they might not have heard of. Because as I was diving into my own self, I was starting to find these resources that were, you know, I'm 44 years old and I didn't really know they were out there, or I hadn't put the curiosity or effort into finding them. And then when I started to see stuff happen in myself. Like, you know, my communication was getting better with the wife. My presence with my daughters was getting better. So, you know, all these things I was learning, I was like, I just got to share this. I got to share it somehow. And podcasting, I've been a huge podcast listener, and the stuff I've learned from podcasts has affected me too. So I was like, there's a perfect medium. Like, you know, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to dive right in. And so, yeah, you mentioned coaches. I couldn't have done it without them, actually. Like, they helped me nail down my message, get launched. There's still my editors and kind of background podcast coaches to this day, become really good friends, actually. And
it's cool.
And it's helped me stay consistent. And that's kind of part of it too, which, you know, running a business and a family and a podcast and everything can get busy, but being consistent with this podcast has been huge.
You said some things that are near and dear to my heart. You're talking about improvements in your own life, in you, and how that impacted your family and your marriage and your relationships. So many men, I'm coming from the man's point of view, think they need to fix everybody else. Is that kind of your mindset, or in the past? I mean, I've had that mindset in the past. Did you have that mindset and then you saw these rocks, if you will, start to kind of roll into the direction you wanted? Like, walk me through that process.
Well, I'm a tradesman. I fix stuff.
Yep.
So you bring a problem to me, I'm going to try and fix it.
Most men.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. And, not always the best. And about a year and a half ago or so, I went through this communication challenge. I actually interviewed her on the podcast, this Lindsay Porter, and it was mostly women in this 5-day challenge kind of thing. But I went through this communication challenge and came out of there with kind of a different frame of mind of how to enter conversations. And it didn't happen overnight. I'll let you know. It was like a little bit of work, but I had these new frames of mind when I was entering conversations with the wife. And I started to just like come into it listening and not trying to solve. And I wasn't good at it at first. Like I was still showing up as the guy that wanted to fix it, but learned a different way to talk with her about the issue. And we'd eventually come to a solution, but it was kind of a mutual problem solving. Communication has been huge, Scott. Like that was the one thing that I learned over all of this, is learning how to do that better, because I wasn't taught how to do that. Like emotional wise is a lot, like emotion and communication and all that. I was taught push it down, show up, be the man, all that kind of stuff. But once I started learning how to get more in touch with it and show up for her, just to create a safe space and let her say her stuff, that was when we started really like falling in line. And then that was right in the midst of a pandemic that we started doing this. It was huge.
That is so awesome.
Yeah. It has been amazing, man. Like over this last year and a half, me and the wife have never been in a more better place together. Like we can talk about the hard stuff. Finances, the pandemic, what we're going to do, what's next. Like that has been absolutely game changer.
Yeah. I hear you. A resounding 1000%. These are principles that my wife and I, in the courses that we teach. These aren't paid courses. We don't charge. This is something we do through our church, which we learn. Very cool. And we do it for the community. It's not just for the church, but it's one of the things that I learned from teaching that course and going through. It's a very long course for couples. And I'm going through this. I'm learning my own things along the way. And one of them was, I am a fixer. I'm going to get stuff done. If there's a problem, I'm going to get out the hammer, and sometimes the hammer's my words, sometimes, and I'm going to just go to work. Well, I learned that, that's not always what my wife wants. I'm like, what? And so I learned really quickly. Another couple gave this to me, and it was very powerful. It was Brian and Edie Sanders. It was maybe come into those conversations and say, when your wife is upset, say, okay, before we get started, is this something you want me to help you solve, or do you just need an ear? And that has been a game changer. It's so hard for me just to be an ear, but then I'm like, hey, look, she does not want me working on solving this. What I've noticed though, is through listening and just listening and say, she's like, no, I just need an ear, being empathetic, it improves our relationship dramatically. But then later she'll usually circle back around and say, okay, here's what I've tried. Do you have any ideas? And it's not emotional. It's not electrified. It's not like, so, and guys, I'm going to be honest, and I've said this on the podcast before, if you want to have great sex with your wife, listen, and be emotionally available and be a support. Yeah. Don't just do it for the sex. You'll get closer in so many ways, but I'm a huge proponent of that what I would call emotional intimacy.
Oh, huge. It's one of the things that I've kind of been diving into lately is learning more about that. And it's just been awesome to be more curious this last 2 years. Been
so good to hear.
Amazing, man. Like I was always just settled into, go to work, be the provider, be the dad, and I was a good dad before, but now just being more curious about myself and how I show up is a whole new game, and it's so fun. Like it is awesome.
Yeah, it's that draw a circle around yourself and fix everything inside of that circle. Because once you do that, everybody else, everything else kind of takes care of itself. Sure, people are going to be irritating, frustrating. They need to work on themselves, but no one can do that but them.
Yep.
You've done all this work on yourself, and we've already seen what it's done for your wife. Has it made you a better dad?
Oh, dude. Like I have 3 daughters. One's 4, 8, and 10. So it's a busy house
Yeah.
and a lot of emotions. And before I used to let the escalating emotions affect me so much, like that I'd get like kind of plant my feet and be like, okay, dad's here and I'm not letting this happen and whatever, which obviously didn't work great. But now I've kind of learned to slow myself down and, like I said, show up and listen. And my 10-year-old daughter is pulling these listening tricks back on me. And she has been my biggest teacher in the last few months. The stuff that she's came up with this summer and the comments and the little hugs and reaching out and grabbing my hand and it's okay, dad. Like there's been so many times this summer where I've just like had to stop and smile because I don't know where well, obviously she got it from me, but just by watching, but that it makes me speechless sometimes, man. Like, yeah.
There's almost no greater joy. I mean, there is, but it's really at the top of that thing. I think a lot of men miss that, don't you? Like, you know, if you want to improve your kids, guess what you need to do? You need to model.
Yep.
In yourself.
Because they're watching and they're listening, and you may not know it, but they pick that stuff up so fast and they know how to use it. Like if they see that, you know, even with, okay, go back to the conversation with me and the wife. If we're in the kitchen and we're having a tough discussion, before it used to kind of get escalated, loud, the emotions were there, you know, everything was building up and they'd feed off that. And all of a sudden they'd think that something was wrong, you know, like, oh, what are mom and dad talking about? When it really might not have been that big of a conversation. But now when we can communicate and it's like softer and, you know, more controlled, that resonates with them too. So then they show up with like not those crazy high emotions that are that go nowhere.
Yeah, this is so good. It's so good. And I truly believe, and this is how my wife and I do it. And you know, my boys are older, 13 and 17. And so I'm at a different place. 10 was incredible, by the way. What an amazing year. And you get 2 more of them. Yeah. But we'll have arguments. We'll have disagreements. Yep. We try to keep it, you know, like you said, more calm, more like, but it's obvious, right? Yeah. We don't hide it from the kids, but we always circle back around or in the midst of it say, hey, it's okay. We're working through this. It's not a problem with our marriage. We're just 2 humans that have opinions. And we've decided to model that and model the appropriate way and not hide it because we can't look perfect because that's just not the way life is. How do you guys handle that? I mean, they're really young, so it's a little different.
Well, no, like they are young, but we've been very open even before we started doing all this. Sometimes my wife is way more open than I am. Like she is not shy about talking to my girls about anything. And so the girls, we're just open about everything. Like if we are fighting and they kind of come in, are you okay, mom and dad? Then we'll be like, yeah, this is, you know, it's a tough conversation. We're just working our way through it and, you know, we'll be okay.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in this time, my girls have seen and know kids that have divorced parents and they have those worries, right? Like, oh, are you getting a divorce? Well, if you show them a controlled conversation, even though it might be loud or escalated or you're working through a tough situation, if you can get through that and then circle back and like, you know, maybe while you're reading them stories at night and say, you know, mom and dad had a tough conversation today, but we're working through it and we're all good. And, you know, show them a healthy way to communicate.
Yeah.
Are they going to be able to do that when they're older? They'll be a hell of a lot better than I was. That's for sure.
I think that's awesome. And I do believe also that you start young with them.
Yeah. Because like I had good parents. I came up and, you know, my parents are still married but they didn't course, it was the 80s.
Right.
And, there was maybe none of this personal growth stuff. It was a small little rural community. So, but anyways, I didn't have the best emotional communication role models. So when I got to 40, of course, it wasn't as good as it could be. I'm hoping by the time my girls are mature that they'll know what's right and wrong and have a way more better foundation than I did.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, they will. I mean,
Yeah.
you're being intentional.
Yeah.
It's like the number one thing is, what do I need to do to make sure that I'm operating in a way that reflects how I want my kids to operate? Because I believe that we're not here raising kids. We're actually here raising future adults.
Yep. 100%.
So in your interviews, in your 50 so interviews, I'm sure you've come across some really interesting people and content. Have you had some big aha moments?
Oh, yeah. There's been a lot, actually. What's one I can pick out? I've had friends, professionals, men's coaches, kind of a plethora of people come on. And sometimes I feel like my content is a little too broad, but it's mainly I've been finding people that have needed to help me in the moment. And then I bring them on the show and share their message. And some aha moments, like there's been so many, Scott. Like,
yeah, I know it's hard to say what they are, for sure.
Yeah. Just the curiosity, like I try and focus, and I've talked about my kind of pillars of content is like intention, awareness, communication, and then grace. You gotta have grace at the end there, and just be easy on yourself to get through all of this.
That's awesome.
Yeah, those are kind of the things I rely on, and then build off of that.
Yeah, like I love it when somebody comes and says, these are the things that I build everything on. And those are epic. I commend you on those.
Yeah.
I was waiting to see what you're going to say. That's really good. So you talk about the broad content. Like I know everybody says to get really narrow. You're in the parenting world, and there is a lot of topics that need to be touched.
Yeah.
But quite honestly, some people sometimes ask about ROI on a podcast, and what's your return on investment? I know you're spending time, you're spending money. With my newest podcast, this isn't a brag, it's been massive. My monetary ROI has been massive, but the ROI on the Brotherhood of Fatherhood, and I think it's what you're saying on Imperfect Parent, is like that, my own personal growth.
Yeah.
And the beauty of that is that there's so much return on investment into other people's lives. And so I hear what you're saying. It's pretty incredible just to open your ears and the mic to some people who have different world experiences.
Yeah. Like the ROI, Imperfect Parent isn't retiring me from an electrician as of yet.
You'll get there, brother.
Yeah. But when I launched, the amount of messages that came to me from like, oh, that allowed me and the wife to have a conversation this morning after we listened to your podcast, or, oh, I never thought about it like that. Or, hey, I don't feel alone anymore. That was crazy that you guys talked about that. Those have been what have kept me going. So if I can, maybe not every episode is going to resonate with every listener, but if I can get a message back saying, oh, hey, that made me dive a little deeper into that content. Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I know a little more than because we talked before, and the story behind starting the Brotherhood of Fatherhood, one of the things is I went through a really, really rough time where I realized that I was only working and not being the father and the husband I needed to be. Yeah. And my story, I don't know if you know it, but I literally had a brick and mortar business and I had a career, and I chose to shut the brick and mortar business down and immediately incurred $250,000 in debt. And that paid it off. I didn't file bankruptcy, which I probably could, but I chose to close the business down. It was actually a profitable business. I chose to close it down. I took on all the inventory myself to be able to dive back into that fatherhood role. You've told me like you're trying to do this balancing act, which we all know is a fallacy. You can't balance. It's more of like, how do I get harmony? What works for me? How is that? You talk about work, you talk about being an electrician, owning your own business. How has that affected you as a father?
Well, I talked about not being around before. I took a lot of on the road work up here in Canada, which is where I'm from. Our economy tanked over the last few years. And when I started my business, it was because of, I had I had a nice retirement maintenance electrician gig, excellent money, pension, benefits, all that kind of stuff. Economy tanked. Opened up my own company with the intention of having more control over my income. Like if I was going to get fired, it was because I couldn't find the work. And managed to, build a successful business and make more money than I've ever made. But then I started to be away from my family and my kids. And so I transitioned a little bit, got definitely pickier on the clients that I picked. Then still was, so involved in the business, still missing out on my kids. So here comes the podcast. And I had built up enough income to hold us, for a few months. So back at the start of this year, I dove right into the podcast for like 3 months. Took some time off away from electrical, dove right in. It was a tough transition, even just learning how to work from home and do all this. That was tough.
It's very tough.
Yeah. And now, like I said, the podcast isn't paying the bills yet. So, but I am so much more intentional with the jobs that I pick and the clients that I allow in my bubble or in my container of life. If it doesn't fit, I don't do it. Even this podcast, I have been trying to build it in a way that will suit me or my vision of what I want my life to be. I didn't want to trade the busy old electrical business for a busy podcast and still not be present for the family, because it could quite easily happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So building the podcast intentionally and then still doing electrical, but being definitely pick and choose who I work for. I'm taking a financial hit, but it feels good.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we misalign the need for money sometimes, where really families that are closer, quite honestly, my family, I grew up in a family without a lot of money. My dad was a business owner, but he was extremely intentional about time, like extremely intentional about time. I never even thought about the money thing. Never even thought about it. I think back to it all the time. And, but I know it was tight. It was really, really tight. The connection and attention and time I got was so much more important to me than that. So
yeah. It's funny looking back as we're adults now and looking back at our parents and kind of understanding their story a little more from an adult point of view. It's like, holy shit. Like they really kind of did a good job, or like, it was hard. And now I kind of understand some of the things that they went through. And it's like, oh, you really were just doing your best at that point in time. Yeah. Which I think we're doing at this time too, is I'm just kind of trying to show up my best. Might not be perfect every day, but just trying.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good. I think such good advice. Just show up my best for every day.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what are the plans for the future for the Imperfect Parent podcast?
Imperfect Parent Media Inc. Okay. No, I want to be a resource for people. I want to be more than just a podcast. I want to, get a blog going and have content where if you're not listening to the podcast, you can still go find me and find the resources that you're looking for. If you want to take the communication quiz to let you know where you stand or that, and just like, I want it to be bigger than me. I don't want Dwayne Moffatt to be the face of the Imperfect Parent. I want the Imperfect Parent to be the community and place where people can come and congregate, maybe build that village. I talked about it way at the start of my journey, and I've lost it a little bit, but that village is becoming so important. Like we just got all locked down again yesterday.
I heard.
And yeah, like but that connection and that I just want to reconnect with everybody and give people that place again. We've lost it a little bit over this last 18, 19 months. So going forward, this next year is going to be fun. I'm getting more involved locally, which is a big thing on my roadmap. Getting involved more locally and just starting there and seeing see what happens.
Yeah, there's two types of, I have this two types of people during the pandemic, right? And there's a lot more types of people. One is, this is happening to me, sucks. There's nothing I can do about it. And the second one is, this is my time to fix things and do things. And I chose fix and do.
Yeah.
A lot of things were born out of my current business was born during COVID. And a lot of people like, you can't build a business during COVID. No one has money. It was even an industry that the gym industry, which was hit one of the hardest hit outside of taverns and bars. And we still built a robust business. The mindset difference. And it seems like you kind of like, hey, this is happening. My marriage is going to get better, and I'm going to do things to move the needle.
Yep. And like, I don't know if I'm fully there, but I want to be the leader or the rock in the chaos, or if you need a kind of that place to come back and hold on to while the whole other world is going crazy, I want to be that light or that stone that you can come back to and be like, okay, this is okay. We can get through this and let's do it together. Like, I just want to be that safe space if I can.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. What are some tools, some specific tools? It could be a book, podcast, whatever. And you can even say your own podcast, which I think you've already done, that have really helped you grow. And that you would say, like, if you're a man and you want to be a better husband and a better father, because I believe that being a better husband means you're going to be a better father. This is what I want you to start with, or this is something that's really changed me.
You gotta start being curious. Don't feel like you're there alone. There, in my recent journey of just diving into the parenting niche, I have found so many, not just parenting groups for moms learning how to, do the life hacks, but I've found groups of men, Brotherhood of the Fatherhood, fathering with daughters, all these men's groups. And you might feel alone at times, but if you just be curious and start looking, there are so many men out there ready to support you that have been where you are, struggled how you're struggling, have some advice, some support. Like, I've seen, this one group I'm in, it's kind of a smaller men's group, but it's just so powerful. Like, people show up there and say, guys, I'm having a tough day. Like,
it's my favorite thing.
I just split with my wife. I'm having trouble with the kids. I lost this, I lost that. And like within minutes, there's like guys jumping on there saying, hey, message me. Hey, I'm here for you. Yep. Hey, and it's out there. So if you like, obviously you're listening to the Brotherhood of Fatherhood podcast, so you're already curious and on that journey, but share it with other men, because it all starts with you and just being there for your buddies. Like, starting this podcast, I've got looks from my buddies. Like, I show up on a job site and there's tradesmen that are still the tough ass tradesmen, and that have no idea. And so I don't jump in their face and say, hey, start your personal growth journey today. Like, I don't, I don't.
It doesn't work, by the way. Yeah.
No, but at least if I can share a little bit and, just start that curiosity factor of digging in a little bit.
Right.
It's a tough journey. It's a lot of work, but it's well worth it, guys. Well worth it.
Yeah. I love that advice. I like those groups. There's been times in the Brotherhood of Fatherhood group where that's happened a lot.
Yep.
I think it gets a little lost in the sheer number of men in that group. And I've told people, and I'm at risk here, but I've told people, like, I would purge everybody who's not active in that group if I could. Just boom, you're gone. Yeah. And I'd love to have like 350 men who are thoroughly active, because I think it would grow. It would be so much deeper. Now, that's not a complaint. I'm super happy. And what I've realized that you may not know is that, who reaches out to me personally the most are people who are in that group who never say a thing. I've learned so much. And when you said X, Y, and Z, that really challenged me. I'm like, what? Can you just not hit a like button? Can you not? What is going on? But that's almost every time. Very rarely is it the really interactive people, because I already know that, they're active. Yep. So it's interesting to understand your impact. And a piece of encouragement for you is you're not going to know the impact that you've made.
Yep.
It's not going to be in subscribers. It might be someone that listened to one podcast and it completely changed their life. Like, literally, I would have zero doubt that that's already happened.
it's crazy to think about it. And that's so powerful, man. Like, the people that are showing up are already like maybe getting their answers, or they're finding their answers, but that quiet guy that's just watching and learning and then strikes the chord and moves the needle for him.
Yeah.
That's why we're here, brother.
So how do you find your guests?
Oh, that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Contacts, like literally, talk with you, might get a recommendation.
Oh yeah, of course.
You came through a connection, Mr. Angelo Cisco, right?
Yep.
Seen you in his content, reached out. It's following the rabbit hole of good, and your network just kind of grows. I've found with the podcast is just the power of the network of other people, and the connections that you make and meet. That's where it is. It's that part of it fills me up, man.
Yeah. I remember our call. I think I gave you about 3 or 4 names. I probably have about 10 more I could give you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really,
and then I'm on Facebook. So I go through Facebook, go down the rabbit hole of website, Instagram, follow up. If I resonate with their content, then dig a little deeper and build relationships. It's all about building relationships.
Well, I think that's a great message for men too.
Yep.
You need to be building relationships.
Yep.
Have you read any books that have really impacted you?
When I got online, being an online entrepreneur is like, it's all about books and reading and growing.
Right.
I'm more of an Audible type guy.
Oh yeah, I love Audible.
Yeah. And
by the way,
to be honest, like I'm a business, personal growth kind of Audible person.
Mm-hmm.
But one book that I really enjoyed lately is Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights.
Yeah.
And the Audible version where he reads it, that guy's like a poet.
Yeah, he is.
And
like,
yeah. and it was a really good book. Like I've listened to it twice now.
Yeah.
So well worth it. What other ones am I? Yeah, I'm right now I'm focused on business and growth. So it's like influence, building a tribe and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, that's awesome. I just love listening and hearing what other people are getting something out of, because it's so powerful. I mean, there's just so much you can learn from what other people. My book list is way too long, and my theory is I'm going to read a book. If there's things in there I need to learn, I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to implement, suck it for all it's worth, and then spit out the bones and move on. So
you just said something cool that I've really like leaned into and tried to do lately is, if I'm reading a book and it's got good content and it's got like a good tip where it's like, oh yeah, that'll work. Well, don't just think that it'll work. Go back, read it, implement it, like try it out. Don't just like put it in the brain and think that it's going to pop up when you need it. Like if you reread it and try it, and you get so much more out of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, man, that's been an absolute blast chatting with you. And I know that your podcast is just going to continue to blow up and be big. And you're going to, I know without a fact, you're impacting lives, and just keep going. Just keep going.
You too, man. This has been great. Well, I don't know if I can date it, but we're doing this on a Friday.
Yeah.
And this lit me up for the weekend, man. I'm full.
I know, right?
And I'm ready to go.
It's energy giving. I need to make sure that you like promote yourself to anybody who's listening in. Is like, if they're like me, I'm very curious. I want to learn more. Your content is very appealing to me. So how do they find you?
Well, I'm always on Facebook, Dwayne Moffatt. And then I do have the Imperfect Parent Community. You can go to the search bar TIP podcast, and that'll get you to the group or whatever. It's a private group. Just answer the questions and I'll let you in. But yeah, that's kind of my main world for the Imperfect Parent. I'm getting my website and everything all up and running, but I haven't really leaned on in time, right?
Yeah.
As far as anything else, I do actually have, we'll maybe stick it in there. I started this form where people could fill out their imperfect parent moments.
Oh, that's cool.
Whether it's like a humor moment or just like the imperfect parent moment. And I was going to start putting some in my Friday solo episodes where I'd read a story, or, if you're a comedian and have a knack with the words, I'd like to get you on my show so we could tell some funny stories and bring some humor out on a Friday afternoon. But so I'll maybe throw that link to you, and
Awesome.
You can throw it in the show notes for people, and they can come and fill out their imperfect parent stories.
Yeah, the show notes. I just don't think people understand the power of show notes.
No,
there's so many resources.
It was funny, and I don't know if I told you this when we were talking last time, but I've been dropping little Easter eggs in my show notes. Like, if you read the show notes near the end, it'll be like, oh, comment this in, or send me a DM and I got a prize for you. And I haven't got many responses. So I don't know if people are just not reading those show notes, but there's gold in there, guys. Like, go find the links, follow the rabbit hole. In my show notes, there's usually a little Easter egg. If you comment or DM me, I'll send you something.
Yeah, I think if you're looking for resources, find a podcast that's talking about the things. Listen to it, make sure, then just go to those show notes. I mean, from the Brotherhood, I can speak from the Brotherhood. If you want to lose weight, there's amazing weight loss coaches in there. If you want to have a mindset, work on your mindset, it's in there. If you if you want to build a business from scratch, it's in there. If you want, I mean, it's like, it is a plethora, it's a gold mine. So yours will be in my show notes.
Awesome, bud.
And I love that form idea, like that getting those stories, that's gold, man. Let people share, and then you can reshare. That's really fun.
Just a simple little Google form.
Scanning my history here, I'm sure I have plenty, but pull a good one out. All right, brother. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, this has been awesome. The Brotherhood of Fatherhood is one of my new resources of going to for support and stuff. So glad to hear you. Glad to see you.
Thanks,
man. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Brotherhood of Fatherhood podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, be sure to share it with your friends, your family, and follow us on social media. If you are a father, make sure you join our Facebook group, the Brotherhood of Fatherhood. Hit the subscribe button and tune in next time for more podcasts from the Brotherhood of Fatherhood.